Let's talk about speed a moment, because this is something that I don't think people realize is happening. Is as we are aging, one of the first things
Mm,
that we lose is speed. That conversion that I was either the loss of the type 2 fiber entirely. So just as a brief review, obviously for you, you are aware of this, but type 1 fibers are the ones that, you're puttering around the house, you're gardening, you're going for a walk, like they're slow twitch, they're highly oxidative. The type 2 fibers, which you've already described to some degree, are, well, there's two types, type 2A and type 2B. 2B is the one that we're really focusing on here because they're highly glycolytic, right? Like
mm,
when we are superseding the oxygen requirements of the cell, let's say in a sprint on the bike or like some type of burst or explosive movement, it's the type 2B fibers that we are engaging with. And as we age, and so this is
mm,
for the demographic that tends to listen to this show, is a woman in perimenopause. So she's like 35 to like call it 52 ish. Even, I have 55 and 65-year-old women that send me messages all the time who I love. But it's that woman who doesn't realize that let's say over the course of her 40s, that
mm,
she's going to be losing speed and power and output at a much higher level than she was when she was
mm.
20, right? Like we don't realize that we lose speed first, and then dynapenia, where we
Yeah.
have the loss of strength, kind of, that sort of follows us later on. But speak a little bit about the importance of maintaining speed and these type 2B fibers, let's say,
Mm.
as we're aging, and and what are some things that we can be thinking about in terms of our programming, let's say with the Carol bike and others, how we can be trying to maintain that.
Yeah, yeah. So you've covered a lot there already, and it's absolutely true. So you lose muscle mass much at a much slower rate, then you lose strength, then you lose speed. So there's basically a hierarchy of how fast you drop your ability and how much of your ability and capacity you lose over time. And this happens um, from around when you're 30. And hence, one way to offset that is to specifically train these types of fibers with sprint exercise and trying to offset that decline, if you want, and trying to delay the aging process there as much as we can. Similar thing also happens with VO2 max, so your aerobic capacity and your ability to utilize and burn oxygen. Um, there we also see from age 30 about a 10% reduction in VO2 max per decade. And so that obviously adds up a lot. And if you think about
Did you say
to
10%
put
per
it,
decade? 10% per decade for
yes,
VO2
exactly.
max. Okay.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And so if you think about what I said earlier, that you can, in only 8 weeks, build an increase of 12%.
It's like 12 years.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like you've
So
gained 12 years.
exactly, exactly. So it doesn't mean you're 12 years younger, but certainly in terms of how you feel and how you feel, I don't know, chasing after a ball or running up the stairs or whatever you do where you need your fitness, it's very noticeable. Feeling 12 years younger or 12 years fitter. I don't want to say 12 years younger. Yeah, maybe 12 years younger in terms of fitness is very noticeable. It's not subtle, and it doesn't stop there. So you continue. Obviously, we don't all in our 50s become Olympic athletes suddenly. But it's a very noticeable improvement. So what the research shows, like 8 weeks for about 12%, and then in the next around 12 weeks, you can get up to 20%, and that's very, very significant. I mean,
That is
2 decades.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is very
exactly. And
significant.
VO2 max is probably the most important physiological marker and predictor of future health. So if you had the chance to influence any of the anything about your physiology by that level, like VO2 max is the most important target that you could think of.
Yeah, and just for those listening that have never heard this term before, this is just a measure of physical fitness, right? So it's an
Yeah.
aggregate of your cardiovascular work. It's an aggregate of your weight training. And I would say there's been, so many papers, but written on VO2 max, the importance of it as a metric to track over time. But I would say every paper that I've read on it just points to this idea of all-cause mortality, all reasons why you might succumb, all the diseases that you might succumb to is inversely proportional to your VO2 max. Meaning that the better your VO2 max is, the fitter you are, let's say, the lower your chance of dying from cardiovascular, cerebrovascular, type 2, diseases, type 2 diabetes, cancer, all of these different things. So VO2 max is something that we definitely want to be paying attention to. I'd say all through the life, but I think more people are, in our 40s when we're like, oh, actually we are about midlife now. We become a little bit more concerned about our health. And so in our 40s, it's like, oh yeah, what might my VO2 max be? And of course, my audience being perimenopausal are dealing with some of the hormonal changes that kind of come in their 40s and 50s as well. And so the affect and the motivation, is further, we'll say, attenuated when they're trying to sort of overcome that limbic resistance, let's say.